This is the second message I bring in the little mini-series on two parables. Those of you who were here last week know that I preached upon the parable of the sower of the seed. And from that, we learn how Jesus leads us into having a changed heart, a transformed heart. And I'm sure all of you who were here last Sunday remember the three things about good soil. Do you not? The first one is you were born to receive the love of God. You must understand that. You must believe it. You must know it. And second, you must be thankful for the opportunity to serve that love. And finally, you must be willing to die for that love. That's the good heart we talked about last Sunday. Now today we want to talk about how Jesus helps us have a transformed life view. A little different from a transformed heart. A transformed life view. Very, very important for us to understand this, because it's part of how we understand that God saves us. And so we have the parable. We've heard it read earlier today. A parable about weeds and wheat growing together. Now you know, Jesus, when he wanted to make a point, he used a rhetorical tool which we today would call shock and awe. If he wanted to make a point, he would shock his audience, and they would go, "Oh, what was that? What did he just say?" He does that throughout the entire ministry of the New Testament. Every time, many times I would say, when he tells a story, inside of that story, all of a sudden comes shock. You remember the parable of the 99 sheep, do you not? Remember that? Great parable. And he's telling that parable to shepherds. And he's saying, a man had 100 sheep. And he gathered them all together and he had 99. One sheep was missing. And then here comes the shock and awe. Wouldn't that shepherd leave the 99 in the wilderness and go and find the one that was lost? The shepherds would have said, what kind of fool would do that? Leave 99 good sheep out in the middle of the pasture where the wolves could kill them and go looking for one straggler. Nobody in their right mind would do such a thing. Shock, awe. Why did Jesus say that? Well, he's got a statement in our parable today that is shock and awe. He's probably speaking to farmers in this one. People who grew grain for a living, who grew wheat for a living. And he's telling them this parable, and they're all just sitting there all nice and happy, and they're listening to the parable about the man who had good seed, and the kingdom of God is like that. And he planted the good seed, and all of a sudden these weeds grow up in it. And it's a sad situation, but his servants come and say, don't you want us to pull up all these weeds and get them out of the good crop? I mean, don't you want us to do that, Mr. Farmer? And then Jesus says, no, let them grow together. Now, if you were a farmer, you would have said, this man is a lunatic. Who in their right mind would let weeds continue to grow in the beautiful field of wheat? Who in their right mind would do that, Jesus? That's the silliest, shockingest thing we have ever heard. But that's what he said. Let them grow together. Wow. So, if we're going to understand this parable, we need to understand the meaning of that shocking statement, let them grow together. Why would Jesus say such a thing as let them grow together? Well, let's look at what the farmer's explanation is in the story. When he tells the servants, no, don't go out there and pull up the weeds, because if you pull up the weeds, you will also probably destroy the wheat. Now what that means is that the roots of the weeds and the roots of the wheat were so intertwined, so much together, that if you pulled up one, you pulled up the other. That was the point. That's why Jesus said, in the growing season, let them grow together. And you know, when people read this parable, when people listen to this parable, I have found out over the years of my ministry, they don't pay much attention to this part. They jump right on down to the last part, the harvest time. Oh, we understand that. All the evil people are going to be bundled up and thrown into the fire, and all the good people are going to be put into the barn of God. And everybody reads that and thinks, oh, that's how the world should be. All the bad people get burned up, and all the good people go to heaven. And that's exactly what we all think, and that's exactly how it should be. But Jesus wasn't talking about the harvest time. Harvest time is when the wheat's already dead. It has grown its fruit. Harvest time is when the weeds are beginning to fade because the wheat's beginning to fade. Harvest time is later. What Jesus wanted to talk about was the growing season. And in the growing season, he said, let them grow together. Let them grow as one plant. Wow. What could he have meant by that? What was he talking about? What kind of a worldview did he have? Well, he had quite a bit of a different worldview from what we have. He was talking about the growing season. And the growing season is our life in this world. But when he uses the expression in the world, is he talking about this physical world in which we're looking at here and all these physical things? Or is he talking about a different kind of world? What kind of a world can you think of where an evil person and a good person would grow together? Usually good people throw away evil people, and evil people hurt good people. That's what we think of in this world. But perhaps there's another kind of world that Jesus was talking about. Perhaps he was talking about this inner world. Do you not know that each and every one of us has our own inner world? Do you not know that each and every one of us sees this reality as we see it inside of our mind, and inside of our mind and inside of our heart, there is another world. My world is not your world, and your world is not my world. I got my world in here. Now it begins to make sense, does it not? Where would an evil person and a good person grow up together? Right here. Inside of each and every one of us, there is a good persona. Inside each and every one of us, there is an evil persona. And they grow up together, intertwined so tightly that we appear to be one person. But you know and I know that we're not one person. Not one person. We manifest two kinds of people in this world. Sometimes we manifest the good person. Sometimes we manifest the evil person. But it is so true that we grow up together. The evil in us and the good in us, the divine in us and the selfishness in us is intertwined. And this is the world Jesus was talking about. This is the world he was saying, let them grow together. Let the weeds and the wheat grow together inside of your world. Well, okay, but why do that? Why not just let everybody be 100% good? Why not just let everybody be 100% evil? Because that's not the way life is. I've never met a person in my life, and I never will meet a person that is 100% good. I have never met, and I have sat with men on death row who raped and murdered. I have never met a person that is 100% evil. You see? We're all filled with the weeds and the wheat of God. And so we have to ask ourselves, why would God make us this way? Why would God cause us to be that kind of a being in which good and evil grow up together? Why would He do that? What was Jesus trying to teach us about a changed life view by saying, let them grow up together? Don't try to weed out the weeds. Don't try to have a perfect field of wheat. Let them grow up together. Why would God do that? Well, I've ministered for 40 some odd years, and I've wrestled with this question over and over again. Like I said, I've sat with people on death row who do not understand why they did what they did, who do not know why. They know what they did. They know it was evil. They know it was bad, but they don't know why. And they've cried to me, why have I done this? I'm thinking of the Apostle Paul when he says, the good that I would do, I don't do, but the very evil thing I do not want to do, I do it. I have seen it for 40 years. We human beings are a mixed bag. So why would God do this? Why would He set it up this way? Well, I don't have all the answers to it, but I have 2 answers this morning I'd like to share with you. 2 reasons why I think God lets the weeds and the wheat grow together. 2 reasons I think we need to understand and we need to know so that we can have this new life view that gives us new life. The 2 things are this, and then I'm going to talk about them a little bit more. The first one is this. God lets that happen. God lets us be in this one body filled with both evil and good. Why does He do it? Number 1 point, I believe, is because God has faith in the divine Jesus Christ He has put in us. He would never let us go up against evil if we did not have something greater in us. He would never, ever let us face that unless He knew the victory is ours. He has this great faith in us. Secondly, the second reason why I think God has done this is because, as it says in Scripture, my grace is sufficient for you, for in weakness my power is perfected. If we were perfect people, why would we need God? You see? So let me talk about these 2 things. The first one, to help you understand it. A while back, many years ago, actually, now that I look back, it's amazing how those years just go by. Many years ago, a young man came to one of the churches where I was serving. And he sat down and worshiped with us, and we got to know him, and he came 2 or 3, 4 times. I got to meet him and talk to him. Now, this was in that German area where men have funny names. And I'm asking him, I said, what's your name? And he says, my name is Connie. Connie, that's quite a name for a man like you. And he was a superior specimen of a human being. His muscles were unbelievable. His chest muscles were just amazing. He was a tremendously strong and beautiful young man. The clothes he wore, it was like one of those plastic mannequins in a sports store, Wasn't a wrinkle anywhere. Finally, I got around to asking him what he did for a living, and he said, I'm a professional boxer. I said, oh, well, we don't get too many professional boxers, but that's good. I'm glad you're a professional boxer. I begin to understand. But he was hungry to know Christ, and I talked to him, and we had many hours together. And he kept saying to me, Pastor, I really want you to come watch me box. Now, boxing is not one of my things. I like football. It's not a violent sport. Boxing is a violent sport. I really didn't want to go. But Connie just kept saying, please come, watch me box. He was boxing in this Bush League over in Austin, Texas, and these gyms that hardly even look like you could even sit in them. But anyway, that's where he was boxing, and he was trying to rise up to become a great new boxing star. So finally I gave in. I said, okay, I'll come with you. I'll watch you box one time. That's about it. And then after that, we'll talk about more of your salvation, you see. Well, we went to the gym that night. He was having a big fight, and I got to meet his manager, and his manager said, oh, hey, come on up here and sit ringside with me. He said, we don't get very many pastors in here. I said, I guess you don't. So I was sitting right there at ringside where I could see all the blood and the spit and everything else, all the horribleness that was coming up there. And then they started warming up, and I saw this opponent for Connie. This guy walked in, and he looked like the Hulk. He was at least a foot higher than Connie and looked even stronger than who I thought Connie was. And they were warming up and everything, and I thought to myself, I said to the manager, are you sure that is Connie going to be okay against this guy out here? And the manager just looked at me with this great smile on his face and says, don't you worry. Connie's going to win. And I looked at that guy and I said, you see, Connie's going to win? Oh, yeah, Connie's going to win. And he had this great enthusiasm and this great confidence that Connie was going to win. And so they started the fight. Oh, it was a mess. It was a mess from the beginning. This guy started beating up on Connie, punching to the right, punching to the left, punching him in the head. And every time he hit him, you could hear Connie groan and groan. You almost hear like bones breaking. I thought to myself, this fight's going to be over in the first round. And the Hulk is going to win for sure. And the manager just kept saying, that's okay, Connie. That's okay. That's okay. And he just kept beating him and jabbing him in the side and hitting him on the head. That was the end of round one. And Connie come and sit down. And I never will forget that manager. He looked at Connie and he says, don't worry, we got him just where we want him. I said to myself, oh yeah, well, sure, it looks like that to me. Round 2 was the same. Connie just took a beating. Round 3, another beating. Round 4, another beating. Round 5, another beating. Round 6, another beating. And I said, how much longer can this Connie last? And the manager never gave up hope. He says, Connie, keep at it, Connie. You can do it, you can do it. Beating him up. And then the 7th round came and he sat down all bloodied and sweaty and just looked like he was about dead. And then the manager said to him, okay, Connie, he has fallen for our bait. But listen, I understood. Because the manager the next time said, you don't have much left now. So Connie let it rip. And Connie understood. They had planned this from the beginning. This Hulk thought he could just beat Connie to death. But Connie knew he was stronger. So that 7th round started, and it was like Connie all of a sudden woke up. Punch, 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 punch. And this Hulk didn't know what had happened. And he was just staggering on his feet. He didn't have much energy left because he had spent 6 rounds beating Connie to a pulp, you see. And finally, right about almost the end of the 7th round, punch, 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 and then one, bam, to the jaw of that Hulk. And he fell down. And they counted to 10, but he still didn't get up. Connie won. And the manager was right. And I was amazed. I never went to another boxing match, but I learned. But I learned something from that. That was a parable, and it's been a parable in my life ever since. God is our manager. God made us, you see. God doesn't make junk. God knows what's in you. God knows the ability you have. God has trained you to be able to rise above the evil in you. God is not afraid of what evil can do. God is not afraid of the temptations you might have and the trials you might have and the difficulties you might have and all the ways that the world hits you just like Hulk hit Connie. Bam, bam, bam. But God knows. Bring it on, evil. Bring it on, devil. Bring on whatever you want to bring on. What is in me is stronger than what is in the world, you see. It was a parable for me, and I understood clearly. This is one of the reasons why God allows us to grow together with the weeds. That manager would never have put Connie in the ring with that Hulk. He would never have done it if he did not believe that Connie could be victorious. God would never put us in this body of death. God would never put us in this body of selfishness. God would never put us in this situation we find ourselves unless God did not believe that we could be victorious of it. Can you hear the faith there? You know, in the church we've said many times, oh, have faith. Oh, have faith. But have faith in what? You need to have faith in the faith God has in you. That's what we need. That's what the manager said, and that's what young Connie told me later when he decided to accept Christ into his life and become a member of our congregation. He said, you know, it's just like with my manager. If he didn't believe in me, I couldn't stand out there in that ring and take those blows. He says, I now know Jesus believes in me. Christ believes in me. God believes in me. And there is nothing on heaven or earth. There is nothing, not flesh flesh, not death, not life, not disaster. None of that can separate me from the love that is in Christ Jesus in me. He understood clearly. He needed to have the faith that God had in him. This is the first point I want to make today. I want you, all of you, to understand this is the new life view God calls us to. We need to quit having faith in the world. We need to quit having thoughts about ourselves being no good or not worthy or not able. We need to quit all of that. The manager of this universe says, I will put you in a ring with anybody and you will win. You will win. That's the faith we have to have. Because there's a lot of dark days for all of us. And every one of us runs into the Hulk from time to time. But don't forget this point. You and your weeds grow together because God believes in the real you. He believes in the real Christ in you, and He believes what that Christ can enable you to do. Second point. Back in the early 80s, I became a vegetarian. I became a vegetarian because I listened to doctors. Sometimes we really should not listen to doctors. I call them the white coats. They always have on a white coat. You know, like in the American Revolution, we said, oh my goodness, the red coats are coming. Well, in our society today, I say, oh my goodness, the white coats are coming. And they have all these opinions about what you need to do and what you should do and how you should do it and what medicine you should take and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, I was convinced in those days by the white coats that I needed to become a vegetarian, which I did. And I've been a vegetarian for many, many years. Well, at that time, in the early 1980s, I started learning how to eat vegetables and learn vegetables and different flavors and different types and the nutrients in them. And I would go to the store and I'd buy these and cook them and try to enjoy all of them. And then all of a sudden one day somebody in our church said, Pastor, have you ever heard, and this was in the early 80s, nobody had heard of this much. And he says, have you ever heard of organic vegetables? Organic? Never heard of such a thing. And he said, well, let me tell you, right down the street from our church, there's this lady, and she has a garden. It's called Granny's Garden. And it's called Granny's Garden because Granny is really old. He said, the last time anybody knew how old she was 85, and that was many years ago. And so I said, well, I need to go down there and take a look at Granny just to see this. But they were talking about these organic vegetables, and we'd never heard of such a thing. I mean, really, in those days, you went to Safeway or Piggly Wiggly or whatever store, and you just bought whatever vegetables there were. But I was curious because as a young man, I had worked one summer in a grocery store. And I remember, to this day I remember, the big truck would drive up with bananas and tomatoes in it. And you know what my job was? I had to run out there to the back of that truck, and there was a big lever up there. And I had to pull that lever down, and it would start going shh. And you know what the hiss was? It was gas going on those bananas and those tomatoes. Because if we had put them on the shelf the way they came, the bananas were green, the tomatoes were pink, they were horrible. They didn't look ripe at all. But when we finished putting that gas on them, we opened the door, and they were the most beautiful yellow bananas you ever saw. And the most red-looking tomatoes you ever saw. And you know, I thought to myself, something is wrong here. I'm not sure what's in that gas. But that's what grocery stores did back in those days. Probably still do in these days. They put vegetables on the shelves that look beautiful, 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 beautiful. But they've probably been gassed or somehow or another made to look fresh and ripe and ready to eat. Well, anyway, I went to Granny's farm, and I said, I'm going to go in there and see what she's got. So I walked into Granny's farm. I went around the back side. She wasn't anywhere to be seen, but I could see her vegetable garden. What a holy mess I saw. The tomato plants were covered with dandelion weeds. You couldn't even see the tomato plants. There were so many weeds on them. And the tomato plants were planted over here and over there and over here. And they had either dandelion weeds on them or some other kind of weeds growing on them. It was the biggest mess you could ever see. And they were little small sized tomatoes. They didn't look like they would be good to eat at all. And then I saw the fruit trees, and the fruit trees were all covered with these vines with thorns in them. Some of them had flowers on them. Some of them were just vines with flower, and you couldn't hardly even see the fruits. And some of the fruits had fallen down on the ground, and she hadn't even bothered to pick them up, and they were all bruised and ugly looking on the ground. I saw all the other kinds of fruits, and even the lettuce. I looked at the lettuce and I said, oh my God, who would eat this? It's got holes in it, all these bugs crawling on it. Nobody's going to eat this stuff. Organic farming has no future in America. I was convinced of it. Well, Granny shows up, and she did look fairly old. I don't know, 90, 95. I don't know how old she was. But she was still out there growing her crops and so on and so on. And I was getting ready to leave. I was not going to buy any of that. No way was I going to spend money on that kind of junky-looking fruit. And she says, let me ask you, do you know anything about organic gardening? And I said, no, I sure don't. Don't want to know anything about it. She said, well, let me tell you about it. She said, you see these tomato plants over here? I'm letting them grow with the weeds. And you know why I'm letting them grow with the weeds? I said, no, I have no idea. Most people pull the weeds away. That's what I would do. She says, because if the tomato has to fight with the weed, the tomato is much better. If the tomato has to struggle with some other plant for its nutrients, then the tomato has much more nutrients in it, much more vitamin C in it, much more of what's good for you in it. And she said, you see these fruit trees up here? Why do I allow these thorny vines to grow on all these? It's for the same reason. They have to fight for their nutrition. They have to be strong. And if they are not strong, they die. This is why my fruits are better than anybody else's fruits in this world. My fruits have had to struggle against the weeds and against the bugs and against the thorns. And they have become strong in good fruits. And then she pulled off one of those tomatoes and she said, take this to any place in this town and ask them how much vitamin C is in it. And I said, oh, well, okay, I'll take that. So I put it in my pocket not to ever think about it again. So I just left. I thought she was a nutcase, Plants get stronger by fighting against other plants. Fruits get stronger because they don't have pesticides to present bugs on them. Fruits actually end up getting better because of that. What a silly woman. What a silly idea. Well, times have changed. And we now know the truth of what Granny said. We now know the truth that fruits and vegetables that are grown organically, that have to struggle for their survival, that have to fight against the evils in this world, those are actually the better fruits, even though they may look ugly, even though they may be small. It is true, and science has proven it over and over again. There's more vitamin C, more vitamin B, more vitamin K, more of the things that are good for us in those ugly fruits that have had to suffer in this world and fight against the weeds and the bugs of this world. I said to myself, I feel bad. I should have listened to Granny a long time ago. And even though it's 40 years later, I'd like to go back and tell her. Well, she probably would not have been there. But I'd like to tell her, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the truth you were telling me. Well, that's the same truth that Jesus is telling us here. The wheat and the weeds need to grow together to make the wheat strong. You see, God says, in weakness, my power is perfected. And that's exactly what Jesus understood. Only when you wrestle with yourself, only when you wrestle with the demons in you, only when you try to become more than what you have been, only when you try to have more love and you fight that inclination not to have it, only when you want to be more like Christ and you fight that inclination not to be that way, only then will you finally be made strong in the Lord, because you will have overcome the weeds that have grown up in you. It's true that Jesus says at the end of the time, when death occurs, when wheat's no longer needed, the plant, when weeds are no longer needed, the plant, then there will be a separation. There will be a separation, and the good in you will rise, and the evil will be thrown into the fires, never to be remembered again. This is the hope that Jesus had. This is the resurrection that he taught. This is the understanding of the gospel that he understood when he told us, let them grow together. Because if the evil and the good in us grow together, we will be stronger in the Lord, and we will be able to remember the faith that he has in us. That's a changed life view. Most people say, oh, oh, well, the evil in me is bad and I don't want to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. No, don't do that. Understand that you need to struggle with it. It's in the struggling that you're made new. You can't struggle your way into heaven. Don't think I'm preaching that. I'm saying to you that it's in the struggling that God changes you. It's in the struggling. The struggling is His tool that makes you more like Him, you see. So consequently, then we need to learn to rejoice in the fact that the weeds and the wheat grow together in us. In conclusion, I'd like to take you back a few moments ago when we heard this great anthem that our choral group shared with us. This is the day the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Beautiful anthem, beautiful words. But let me tell you, many in the Christian community misunderstand that. They've turned it often into a happy little song. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let me tell you, there's more truth to that song than that. Because the truth of life is this. Life is not always a time of sunshine and roses and glory. Life is not always a time of obeying Jesus and doing what you need to do and doing all the things right that need to be done. Life is not always that way. And you know it and I know it. Life has its dark days. Life has its bright days. Life is filled with both darkness and brightness. And so we have to remember the bad days do come. Oh, I can remember these bad days. I can remember the bad day I had a phone call that my father had passed away in the garden that he was working in. I remember the day that I received from an officer of the court the divorce papers that I was not wanting to get. I remember the day I was told I needed to have a stent put into my heart. I remember all these bad days that I have gone through. I remember all these weeds that I have seen. I remember the day that my father backed up in my driveway and ran over my only beloved pet dog and killed him. I remember those days because life is full of bright days and dark days. But they grow together, and we understand now why they do. And so we're able to say, just like our hymn today, our anthem today said, this is the day the Lord has made, be it a good day or a bad day. We will rejoice in it. Amen.